You're listening to Brandon Sports Talk, interviewing professional athletes and Paralympians and Olympians. And now for your professional athlete interview and your host, Brandon P.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Canada rowing athlete Morgan Rost. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Brandon?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to become a professional athlete in rowing?
Well, it's actually kind of funny. I never really set out to be a professional rowing athlete. I think growing up, I was just really big into sports. I was very lucky with my parents. They put me into anything I wanted, and I was really big into basketball. When I got into high school, I started rowing, and rowing professionally was never on the radar for me. It was first just kind of stepping stone to go to university. And then when I made a U23 team for the first time in 2017, we did really well. And then it was kind of the next step. Our head coach at the time invited a bunch of us out to join the senior team once we graduated. So it kind of just fell into place. It wasn't from a young age wanting to row professionally. When I was younger, my dream was to row on a national team, like whether it was for basketball, rowing, and obviously worked out for rowing. So it's kind of cool that I've been really lucky to keep living out this dream and doing what I love every day. It's a really big privilege and honor.
Of course, what was it like going to Virginia Cavaliers and competing collegiately in rowing?
I loved it. I had an amazing 4 years there. It definitely went by way too fast. It was cool going to Virginia because the school had a lot of history there, and I loved all the traditions and just how all the traditions and everything about Thomas Jefferson founding the school. And it was a really neat environment. So I loved the school, but then I also loved the rowing because Kevin Sauer, he built the team from the ground up like 30 years ago and started women's rowing at Virginia and really made a great like team culture and traditions there. And rowing out of UVA, the team was quite big, so it was pretty cool being one of the young ones and having all these like amazing athletes to look up to. Because in my first year, there were all these girls who had been to under 23 world championships with their national teams, and it was just like pretty cool. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm rowing at the same place with these girls. And it just opened up my eyes to all the different possibilities there were with rowing. And because it was a big team, it was very challenging, but at the same time it was cool because you're always like pushing each other, and you can have like so many eights out at a time, and it just really made this competitive environment that made rowing a lot of fun.
Of course, what was it like getting to row under Coach Kevin Sauer?
It was great. I mean, he definitely had a lot of he's been there for a long time, so he had his ways of just like knew what worked and knew like how to get the most out of us. And he always had some inspiring quote or some story for the day, and he just knew really how to like bring a team together and get us all like work really hard. And he just had a way that like making sure that like you're grateful for everything, entitled for nothing. That was a big saying in the boathouse, and he really kind of ingrained that in us, that we have to work for everything that we had. And I think that's pretty special.
Of course, what was that like getting to represent the Virginia Cavaliers and getting to put on that uniform for them?
It was pretty special. I mean, it was cool because I was rowing with my best friends and getting to race with all my other girls that I started out with my first year and racing with them all throughout. I think it's pretty cool that you go through so much together when you're at school, that when you finally get to race and you always know that you have each other's backs, and it's just a different kind of bond. So I think every time we got to put on a uniform, it was pretty special. And it was always really exciting because I got to race with my best friends, and it's not very often you get to do that.
Of course, for you, what was that transition like from going from competing in collegiately rowing to then making the national team for Canada and representing Canada?
The transition was hard, just because I moved. So I'm from Ontario, went to school in Virginia, and then I moved all the way out west on the other side of Canada, to British Columbia on Vancouver Island. And it was hard just because now you're in a very new environment. It was just a new challenge, and it was an adjustment only rowing. So when I was at school, I had school, rowing, friends, and social life, and that kind of thing. Where when I first moved out to the team, I was really lucky that my older brother, Ryan, he was living out in Victoria as well with me because he had just rowed on the team earlier, and he was still living out here now that he was done rowing. But I got to see him, his wife Mandy, and my niece Evelyn. At the time, she was still quite young, about like 2 years old. So that was pretty special, and that definitely helped with the transition because you didn't really know anyone besides your teammates, and it can be pretty lonely and isolating just not having a whole nother like community outside of rowing. Where at school I had so many different social circles, and your team we had like 60 girls, and now all of a sudden you're on a team with like 20 tops. And the volume was a lot more. Like in university, we had time restrictions where you could only train for 20 hours a week, and after that the coaches had to let you go. Where now it's my full-time job, which was really, really cool, but then you just have that many more hours that you're able to train. So it's just rowing 24/7.
Of course, what was that like, obviously getting to share in that moment with your brother who rowed and stuff, and now you were rowing for the Canada national team?
Yeah, it was pretty special. Like with Ryan, he went to the under 23 World Championships in 2012, and our family got to go and watch him. It was in Lithuania, and it was pretty cool just to see him represent Canada. And then that kind of sparked my interest that this is what was possible. Okay, I want to row for the under 23 team. This is kind of the next step, because I was only in high school at the time, so I was still quite a bit of ways. And seeing him go through like the journey of rowing full time, and I think I learned a lot because he went through it before me. So he always had advice and tips, and I'm very lucky to have had Ryan kind of show me the ropes, even though he wasn't fully on the team at that time. He just retired the season beforehand, so he still very much knew what was going on, what was it like. So I think it's pretty special that I was able to share that with him. And funny enough, now my younger brother, Steven, he just joined the team and is rowing out here with me. He just moved in January, so it's kind of like a full circle moment where Ryan was able to be here with me, and then I'm here with Steven. So
Of course, what was that feeling like the first time you got to represent Canada in the U20 team?
it was unbelievable. Yeah, I could feel like I still remember that, how exciting it was. In 2017, I made the under 23 women's 8, and we were racing in Plovdiv, Bulgaria. And it was cool because there were no expectations for our boat. I think we had a couple girls had gone to U23s prior, but a lot of us were pretty new to the international stage. And it was cool because we didn't really know how we were going to do. Like going into it, we were very naive, and we thought we were fast, but some days weren't always great. And we had no one really to compare against, because since you're just training on our own, there was no other aid. And being in Canada, like there's no races leading up to the under 23 world. So when we got over there, it was just so much unknowns, but I had a great crew and a great coach, and it was just an awesome experience. And it was really special. Like I remember when we got our unis, and it was kit day, one of the most exciting days of the year. It feels like Christmas in July. And just seeing the Canadian red and white uni is really special, because you've worked so long for this, and now you finally reach your goal to race for Canada. And not everyone has this opportunity. So it's kind of really recognizing that it's such a privilege, but I've also worked so hard to get here. Yeah, it was really special.
What was that 2018 season like, going to the World Championship for U23 and winning first?
So the under 23s in 2018 was interesting because we'd won the year before, set the world's best time. So now we had a target on our back, and about half the crew was the same, or 5 of the 9 of us were the same, and then we had 4 new girls. So it was pretty cool because half of us knew like what it took and what it was going into it, but it was just interesting because we weren't the underdogs anymore. Now that we were the ones to beat, which is also kind of a cool feeling, but still nerve-wracking nonetheless because every year is different. You don't know whatever all the other countries are doing and who's really good this year. And we never really knew how good we were either until you kind of get to the start line. So winning in 2018 was really special because it's hard to win back to back. So I think it made it just feel that much like sweeter to be able to do it again. And you're like, okay, that wasn't a fluke. Like we are really good and we have what it takes to win and we know what to do now. So I think that was a lot of confidence came from that. And it was a lot of fun.
Of course, what was that feeling like in 2019, making the senior national team and getting to go to the World Championship?
So in 2019, I competed at World Cup 3 and a 4. And it was a big step from under 23s, but it was great to get international or senior international experience for the first time. So it's just a whole nother level up, and just to be able to race at that competitive environment and know what I have to do to make the next step. So I think it was very, eye-opening, and it was just a great experience because that was the first time I was at an international competition, and you see all these like rowing legends walking around, and you're like, wow, I can't believe I'm here. And then that summer for the World Championships, that was the Olympic qualifying regatta for Tokyo. I was a spare, and that was obviously it's always hard being the spare, but it was cool being there because on the women's side, we qualified so many boats to go to the Olympics. So it was like really cool just to see the depth of our women's team and just how strong that the group was moving forward. So I was really happy to be a part of that and know that like I was able to contribute to how many boats we qualified to go to Tokyo.
How was that experience like, as you said, and getting to see all those legends in rowing compete with you?
Yeah, it's kind of cool because so there are people you've looked up to for so long, and it's funny. I think rowing, you can stay into the sport for a long time if you want. So there's some people that you're like watched in 2012 or 2016, and then they're still around, and it's just kind of shocking sometimes. You're like, wow, you're so fast and so good, but you're also just a regular person. Like you're just here eating at the cafeteria with me, and you're just another, person walking about, but they're obviously very talented. So it's just kind of cool to know that anyone can get to that point. It doesn't separate you from everyone else. You're just another rower.
Of course, in 2020, what was that experience like, getting to make that Olympic spare team to go to the Olympics?
Yeah, it was hard in the sense where I missed out on being in the women's 4, but I was really excited that I was able to still go to the Olympics and support the team. I think it really just showed me, or I got to experience the Olympics, but it was COVID Olympics, so it was different. But still getting to go, I think, was a really valuable experience, and there was a lot that with the extra year because of COVID, there was a lot that happened leading up to that Olympic team. So it was like, a relief that I was able to go, and I was so excited that I'm still a part of the team and I get to go to the Olympics, like something that you've always dreamed of as a kid and watched on TV. And that was like really, really cool because it's just amazing to be able to say that you got to go to the Olympics and with your team and represent Canada. And obviously, COVID made the Olympic experience a bit not normal, but I'm still so thankful that I got to go. And
Of course, what were some of the things that you were doing to prepare yourself to help make that reserve team to go to the Olympics in 2020?
honestly, I feel like it all circles back to like the year before. So when COVID hit everyone really hard, we all kind of got sent away, the center closed, and I went back home to Ontario to live with my parents, and my younger brother was there, and I had a broken rib at the time. So I took like the few months just healing, and then I just started training on my own every day and in the garage or in the basement, and really just trying to make every day count, even though I was by myself or just with training with my brother. And then I was able to get back into rowing. And then when I found that I came back to the center, I felt like I was better in a better place than when I left in March. So I thought that was pretty cool. I felt like I was rowing better, I was fitter, stronger. And I think that gave me a lot of momentum going into the winter and going into the year. Like gave me some confidence that, okay, like I'm in the mix, like I can do this. And so I think a lot of it came from the time at home training.
Of course, what was that experience like going to the Olympics and being a part of the reserve team?
Yeah, it was great being able to support my teammates and the women's pair with Kaylee Filmer and Hillary Janssens. They got a bronze medal, so getting to see that race was really, really special for them. And just being able to cheer them on the sidelines. And then with women's 8 winning gold, that was obviously unbelievable and amazing. So I think seeing my teammates have so much success and be able to have been there, like helping along and just being able to be there for them and see them like win, and it was just incredible.
Of course, how did it help to see them win and be there in support to then help your training to then one day be there with them competing?
Yeah, I think part of it was like, wow, that's incredible. And I was training with them every single day. So it just pushed me to be like, to believe that I could do that someday as well. And just knowing that I wasn't far off from being the 8. So it's like kind of gives you some confidence, like, okay, like you're almost there. You can still do this. Like you just, have some things you got to still work on. And, but you're not too far off. And if they can do that, then why can't I someday? And that's obviously why I came back to continue rowing and trying to go for Paris in 2024.
Of course, how did you use the Tokyo Olympics as a reserve for motivation to then make it to Paris?
I think part of it is obviously I'm really happy to always be there to support my team, but also when you're there on the sidelines, you're like, like I really want to be in the boat racing. So I think it always just kind of keeps fueling me that to never settle and that like I want to be racing and I want to be like in that top boat to do all the little things right, and how can I keep making gains and not just being okay with where I am, because I think you can go one of two ways, but just being like satisfied, okay, like I'm good enough, I'm still on the team, like I keep making it. But then on the other flip side of it, you really use it to keep pushing you and be like that, like, okay, I'm good, but I want to be better. I want to be rowing in those boats and racing. And I think it just takes a lot of like perseverance and believing in yourself to get through that, because it's tough, not making the team, but it doesn't mean that's it. Like, and after the Olympics, or took some time off, and then last year when we all came back together, I made the women's 8, which was like a priority boat, which I was really excited for. And then we got bronze at the World Championships. And then this summer, I'm back in the women's 8, and we're heading to World Cup 2 and 3 in a few days, actually. So I think you can really take those, losses per se and use them to make you better. And, it's not over until it's over. Someone told me that once, that like you keep fighting, like you'll get there. It's just not always a straight path, and it's definitely hasn't been for me, but I think that's also made me just that much better of a rower.
Of course, what is that like, obviously getting to compete in the rowing 8 versus, let's say, the 12?
So there's not actually a 12 boats. We have either a 2-person, 4-person, or 8-person. And what's different about the 8 is that we have a coxswain. And so that's the person that sits in the front of the boat. And right now we have Kristen Kitt, and she was also in the gold medal 8 in Tokyo. And so for an 8 compared to a 4 or a pair, she steers the boat. So she has like a little rudder, and she's able to keep control of the boat and make sure we stay in our lane. And then she also she's a microphone to talk to us. And so that's calling the race plan, motivating us, telling us what's going on, what's happening in the race. And she's kind of our whole like eyes, ears, just like she's like the brain of the boat. And she basically tells us what to do, and then we execute it as much as possible. Where in a smaller boat, like a 4 or a pair, you basically have to do that all by yourself. The person that's sitting in bow, which would be the first person to cross the finish line, they're the ones calling the race plan and kind of navigating everything. And then they could be the one steering with their foot, or often it's the stern person steering. So they're on the other end of the boat, they'll steer. And it's harder in one sense because you guys have to do everything. So you definitely can't talk as much in a race as much as our coxswain would. And but it's just almost a different like feeling because the boat's so much lighter, because you don't have to pull someone else around who's steering the boat. But they're just very different, and I love them both. It's sometimes just nice to be in an 8 because you don't have to think as much. Like our coxswain just kind of take cares of everything, and we just do what she says. Where in a smaller boat, you have to be more aware of what's happening, looking around. So that would be a big difference.
Of course, what is it like getting to compete with some of your teammates like Kristen Kate, Gabby Smith, and Kristen Romper?
Yeah, so actually a funny story with Christine Roper. When my brother was at the under 23 World Championships I was talking about, she actually was there, her and another teammate of mine, Suzanne Granger. And I was in grade 9 or 10 at the time, and they were at U23s, and they both went to Virginia, where I later went on to school. And I thought they were like the coolest people ever because they had won a 4 at under 23s, or sorry, won a gold medal in the 4 at the World Under 23 Championships that summer. And then I went to UVA, and I just thought they were like amazing. And which was part of one of the reasons why I got really interested in going to school at UVA. And it was funny when I joined the team that I was rowing with them. And it was kind of weird because I really looked up to them, even though I only spoke to them a couple times when I was in high school. And then all of a sudden I was rowing with them was pretty cool because they just had so much experience, had been around for a while, had a lot of success. So it was cool to just be able to learn from them and just be in the same environment as them.
Of course, what was that like, obviously, getting to compete with Virginia Cavalier alumni like Kristen and Suzanne?
It was special. Like whenever the 3 of us got in a boat, it was like, okay, go Hoos, or we called it the Wahoo Wah 4 because that's one of the cheers that Virginia or University of Virginia would do. And it was always a lot of fun just being able to resemble or bring back like some university stuff. But I never actually overlapped with them because they're older than me, but we still had a lot of the same experiences, being under Kevin, living in the same area, going to the same restaurants and places to eat, and where we hung out, and just talking about the school. It didn't really change at all from the time that they were there to when I was there. So I felt like we had this like connection, even though we never crossed paths at school. It was, yeah, pretty neat.
Of course, what was that feeling like getting to put on that Canada uniform and getting to represent the senior national team?
I think every time you get to wear a Canadian uniform, it's really special. And I think every year that you get to put it on, there's always so many different things that happened in that year. So I never take it for granted. I mean, obviously the first time is like maybe the most exciting and surreal, but every time we go back to put on the uniform and have our maple leaf ceremony and everything that is a tradition on the team. It's really special because you just know how hard you work to get to this point again. And each year there's a lot of obstacles that everyone has to overcome. And I think it really shines a light on it's never guaranteed that you're going to be back on the team. But every time that you are, like, really represent Canada as best as you can. And it's such an honor that there's so many other people that want to be wearing this uniform and you're the one who's wearing it. So it's like, how can you best represent like them and the country and your teammates? And it's just such an amazing feeling to be wearing it.
What does it mean to you to represent Team Canada and have Team Canada behind your last name?
Yeah, it's pretty cool to where now you're not just on the rowing team, you're part of all of Team Canada, like at the Olympics. And I think it's just feels like you have that much more support and that many more teammates with you. And hopefully going into Paris, we have that and we can actually get to meet all the other Canadian teams and feel even more that community that we didn't have in Tokyo because of all the COVID stuff.
What is it like getting to meet your fans and having them ask for your autographs and photos with you?
Well, for rowing, we're not the most famous, but it is kind of cool when we are at some of the international regattas and there are people that come up and want your autograph because we're not like a, NBA team or NHL player that rowing is very it's kind of niche sport, so not everyone knows about it. So when there are those big fans that really care and want your autograph, it feels even more special because it doesn't happen every day. Like, if you're to see Sidney Crosby or something, obviously everyone will be freaking out, where I can very much go on my day and no one knows who I am. But yeah, no, it's cool to see fans of rowing and how much they care and that they want your autograph, because then all of a sudden I feel really really cool.
Who are some of the people that you look up to in the rowing community?
Oh, that's a tough question. There's a lot in the rowing community. I think I've had a lot of amazing coaches to get me to where I am today. I've had a lot of amazing teammates that I look up to every single day as role models. And so I think, yeah, each phase of my rowing career, there's someone else who's impacted me positively to get me to this spot. So I don't know if I could say just, one person kind of thing.
Of course, what is that like, obviously getting to compete against those different countries, in particular your Team USA team?
Competing against Team USA is always fun. I feel like we just have this rivalry for whatever reason, just, border each other. So you always want to win. Yeah, I think it just fuels the fire. Is always really exciting to get to race against them. And then but I would also say what's cool about racing against the other countries is that I've had some teammates from Virginia now be on these international teams. So now I'm like racing against some of my best friends and old teammates, which I think is really cool that there's always like a handful of us that each kind of year that continue to go on to row at the next level. And it's always fun little reunions coming back at the regatta site and seeing different teammates, like my one friend Heidi Long, who rows for Great Britain. We've been on the team a few years at the same time together, so whenever we see each other, it's so nice because we haven't been able to hang out since school because we're both training with our national teams. So it's always like a cool little reunion to see each other. And yeah, it's hard when you race against each other because you want them to do well, but obviously you also want to do well. So that's where it gets a little tricky.
Of course, what is that experience like, as you said, getting to race against some of your alumni from Virginia Cavaliers?
Yeah, it's a cool experience to know that everyone's like kept rowing and reaching this high level and continuing this dream that they really want. But it's tricky, or not tricky, but it's just like a weird feeling that you're now racing against your friend from from another country, but at the end of the day, you want to beat them. So it's just kind of funny.
Of course, what has it been like, obviously, getting to live out your dream to row professionally?
It's been amazing. I'm so lucky that I'm still here rowing. It's a really cool experience. Like obviously some days rowing isn't the most fun sport and it's really hard, but at the end of the day, like I get to row for a living. Like that's so cool and it's pretty special. And so I think that I'm really grateful that I'm still able to row and or one that like my body's allowing me to still row and that I have all the support from my family that I'm able to keep rowing. It's really cool and I think I just really appreciate like every day that I get to go and do this and obviously every day is not the most fun but it's a really like I'm really privileged to be able to do this as my day job rather than working a real job.
Of course, what are some of your future plans in the sport of rowing?
Well, the current ones are racing this summer with the team and hopefully qualifying the 8 and some other sweet boats at the World Championships in Serbia, which are in September. And then hopefully going to Paris in 2024 and winning a gold medal would obviously be amazing. And after that, I'm not too sure. I think I'm just taking it every year at a time. And my main goal is to get to Paris and hopefully that all goes well. And then I'll figure out where I am with rowing after that. So
Of course, what is that feeling going to feel like to get to make that Olympic team to go to Paris and even maybe make that Olympic team to go to LA in 2028?
yeah, I think it's cool. Like it's coming fast, which is also kind of crazy that it's really only a year away until they'll be naming the Olympic team. And in one sense, it's a bit scary that you work so long for a goal and that it kind of just creeps up on you. And I think, yeah, it would just be really, really cool opportunity to then finally get to like race with the team at the Olympics and then LA, if I, could still row. I think that one's also cool because it's in America. So it'll be a lot closer for people to come and watch. But, and yeah, I just think it'd be really neat to go to LA as well. But right now, so my eyes on Paris, and we'll see what happens.
Of course, what advice would you give those people that are in college that are looking to row in college?
And high school, looking to row in college. I think one of the biggest things that I found was when you go on all the recruiting visits and talking to all the coaches is you really want to love the school that you're going to separate from rowing because things happen, injuries happen, your coach could leave, that you basically go to a certain school for your coach and then they get a job somewhere else or you go there and maybe you're not loving rowing or it's not going very well. So I realized that you have to love like the actual school, the atmosphere first. And that was someone who told me when I went to Virginia, when they were on a recruiting visit, they're like, I knew I loved the school because when I came and visited, it was rainy, the worst weather, like it was not nice, but they just still loved it. And, it wasn't like shiny, sunny California, but it was, if you can really appreciate the school on like almost be able to separate it a bit from rowing and not identifying yourself as just the rower, but going to still get like an education for something that you want to do after school because you don't know if you're going to how long you're going to be able to row for. And obviously it sucks, but things happen. So you kind of have to be prepared for that in the worst case scenarios. So I think that's the big thing. I think having a lot of good communication with the coaches and knowing what they're looking for, how they think you'd fit into the team, where they think maybe your projection could go with how they see you could contribute. I think another thing is really making the most of every opportunity that you have and being able to row collegiately is so amazing. So if you get the opportunity, like definitely go and take it. I definitely there's no regrets once you get to go and live the student athlete lifestyle. So I'd probably say those things.
Of course, what advice would you give those college rowers that are looking to compete in collegiately, but also represent a national team while in college?
Every country's federation is a bit different. So I think if I was them, reach out to whatever the head of whatever country you're from, whether that's GB, Rowing Australia, and know like what do they need from you while you're away at school. So for me, I just submit some erg scores throughout the winter and just kind of keep in touch about how things were going. And then once I hit a certain score for my 2K erg, then I was allowed to, or then I got like an invite to go to the summer trials team for their under 23. So I think communication would be key for that, and just to set yourself up that you're able to try out for the team, and that the opportunity is there, because sometimes selection, they have certain criterias, so you just have to make sure you hit all the boxes.
Of course, what advice would you give those people that are looking to represent a national team and make the senior national team?
For rowing or any sport?
For rowing
For rowing? I think that's a tough one. So I think really it's a hard thing to be doing every day. And one thing that I've learned trying to make that transition from collegiate to making the national team is you have to have a lot of confidence in yourself. I think it's really hard sport, and it's weird compared to collegiately where everyone was always able to race, and now this is a lot more, you're racing against someone else to get your spot in the boat, and there's less boats to make, so it's a bit more cutthroat. So I think you just have to do it with a lot of confidence and believe in yourself and know that you're capable of being here. But I think what's also very valuable is learning as much as you can from your teammates. I think I've learned more from my teammates while being on the national team than I have from the coaches. Some of them have had so many years of experience and just have a different way of explaining things and really just trying to soak up all the information they have. And they're the ones in the boat with you as well, so they can feel and see what you're doing a bit differently. And I'm saying obviously listen to whatever the coach says, but I think it's really valuable to really listen to your teammates, ask them questions. How can I do such and such better? And how would you do it? Or really asking them for advice along the way, because it's intimidating being brought onto the senior team and you're with girls who've been on the team for 6 years or longer. And you're like, hey, well, how am I going to crack into that group and beat them someday? And really the only way to do that is just really taking every day head on and trying to get better every day and asking questions on how to keep getting better.
What advice would you give those people that are looking to represent, whether it's Team USA or Canada, for the senior national team?
I know that intake for Canadian and the States are different. So I would also, once again, kind of go back to the federations and figure out what you have to do to get on the team. Like, what boxes do you have to check? What erg scores do I have to do? Do I have to go to a certain pairs regatta or singles, or like a sculling regatta if you're a sculler? I think, really important to figure out how the process is to get onto the team, because everyone's a little bit different and it even changes each year. Like, it's a lot harder to get in if it's already an Olympic year, where if it's 3 years out from the Olympics, it might be, the guidelines might be different.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media?
My Instagram is at Morg Ross, and also have a Twitter account at Morgan Ross. So you can give me a follow.
Thank you again, Morgan Ross, for your interview, and best luck in your future as a Canada rower.
Thank you. It was great talking to you.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Morgan Ross, for your interview, and best luck in your future.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.